A lot of people wear green on St. Patrick's Day, but of course, in Kelton Hatch's case, some of that green goes with the uniform, doesn't it?
It does, and so you're covered year round for St. Patty's Day.
I looked up. I looked up this morning at the monitor here, in the studio on Fox News, and the anchor, he had on a green tie. His co-anchor had on a green suit. She went to a reporter in the field who had on a green dress, and I just thought, I think this is a little overkill.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, you've got to be able to wear that green sometime, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah. Most people they don't like to, but I guess this is the excuse today.
There you go.
uh, Kelton Hatch has come by from Idaho Fishing Game on his monthly visit, and we've got a lot going on because simply we're getting to that point where the snowpack will be melting soon, and spring is coming up next week, and that means, of course, we're getting into a lot of changes in seasons for hunting and fishing too as well.
You bet.
But you've got, in fact, we talked about this last year, bitter brush planting.
Yeah.
Good place to start today.
Well, I just wanted to kind of, give people an update on what's going on. We've had about 8 groups of volunteers from the high school. I guess the high school kids aren't really volunteers. Their teachers volunteer them to get them out of the school for a day. But, they do a lot of work. They've put in about 62,000 bitterbrush and sagebrush plants this year, and we've been able to strategically place those in critical mule deer range. We've had some down in the South Hills. We've had a couple 3 plantings up there by Hill City, and we had another one yesterday up in Richfield. Tomorrow we'll be down in the Three Creek area, and we're just trying to hit these areas where we've had these major or catastrophic burns, and try to improve the habitat in some of those areas. But I just wanted to give a thanks to all those that have volunteered this year. We had 70 folks that just came out last Saturday on such a beautiful day. They volunteered a day to come out and plant bitterbrush. And the week before, we had about 50 that showed up over in Bliss. And then we've had all these students. And so it's really, it's going to be a good year for plant survival too, because we've had all this precip.
I was going to say, last year was so dry, and we got lucky. I mean, in the rain and the snow over the course of the last 3, 4 months.
Oh, it has. It's just phenomenal. If you haven't been up in the hills or the foothills, it's beautiful right now. I mean, everything's greened up, and we get this. Personally, I mean, I hear a lot of complaining about Mother Nature can't quite figure it out. She's kind of going back and forth at this. I mean, what is it? It's March.
Mid-March, yeah.
Yeah, so it's pretty early, and it's gorgeous out there right now.
I'd say this has been more of a traditional type of winter than perhaps what we've seen in the last few years.
And I would too. We've had a lot of precip, and it's, well, probably a little high on the precip end for traditional, but we did have some snow that stuck around this year, and we had good snow base up in the mountains, and we've had really good. We're sitting on about an 82, 83% fawn survival right now statewide. Some of the areas, over by Bliss and that Bennett range, we have had higher mortality, but they got snow early. We've got a lot of habitat issues out there. That's why we've been really pushing a lot of these. We got a plant called Medusa head rye out there that's really killed a lot of the native vegetation off. We've had some big fires out there. We've got a lot of cheatgrass, and so we're only at about a 45-50% fawn survival down there, which people shouldn't panic, because I mean, if we can get, if we can maintain this 45-50% fawn survival, we're not going to see any increase in the deer population in that area, but we won't see a decrease either. When you get down here in the South Hills, it's just the habitat's enough different. We had a little bit later winter. The winter that hit down there hit really high in the mountains, and we left a lot of open front range for the deer to move down into. And we're sitting on over a 92 to 96% survival down there. And so, but statewide, things are doing really well.
You also wanted to mention horn hunting, and I know this came up briefly in one of your previous visits. You wanted to bring up a couple of things about that too as well.
I did. This is horn hunting is where antlers are shed every year by elk, moose, deer in this area, and folks want to get out, and there's a lot of people that get out and look for antlers. One of the issues we're running into is especially the mule deer, is because mule deer drop a lot earlier than elk. Elk are just barely starting to drop right now. their antlers, and so there's a lot of people out pushing around. The problem is these deer have had a harder winter, and they don't gain weight in the winter, and they're some of them are really on a fine line of survival. Even though it's greening up and it's nice out there, they're changing forage. They're really susceptible to spring colds like we are, or sickness, and so we're really trying to talk folks into, you know, giving them a wide berth. Glassy animals from a long ways away when you're out there. Most of the deer have moved up above where you're going to find deer antlers. Right now, the deer antlers are down quite a bit lower. Elk are up there more around where the deer are and stuff, but just try not to push them, because the issue we're running into, we've just got a ton of people out there right now running around. Some of them are breaking the law. They're using their motorcycles or ATVs to traverse the ground instead of walk. So we're trying to talk folks into walking and hiking and looking around, and giving the animals a little bit of a wide berth, and then also just respect private property this time of year.
And turns out I had a friend on Facebook, and apparently her husband went out back and just right on the property, found side by side. They were perfect, symmetrical, and everything else.
Uh-huh.
Just dropped there, picked them up, and he didn't have to go very far, other than a couple hundred feet from the back door.
Yeah, and some people are fortunate to live that close to wildlife, where they can. But we get a lot of folks that, you know, we'll get people from all over the state that come down here to the Bennetts, if not other states, just because we've got such a high population of deer down there. And so, but no, it's fun. It gives you something to do. Even if you don't find any antlers, it's fun just to get out and do a little bit of walking around.
Yeah, yeah, good for people in this time of year too.
You betcha.
Not
You
too hot,
betcha.
and not cold.
Well, and I like that. That 40 to 50 degree temperatures is, if you're hiking, that's t-shirt weather for me, because it's big guys. We put off a little bit of heat when you get exercising, and so. But it's just nice to get out there, and you can get out of the wind just hitting the different ravines, and if you're looking in the trees and stuff. But it is a lot of fun. But be prepared to see folks out there, because there's a lot of people out there this year.
Reminds me of the story Rush Limbaugh told when he first moved to New York City and started his national show. He had an apartment without central air conditioning, and he said, "Gosh," he said, "I didn't know about summers in that town." He says, "But then after that first summer," he said, "let me tell you a story about big men. Big men sweat."
They do. Yeah.
It's 9:15. Of course, Kelton Hatch joining us in studio from Idaho Fish and Game. We've got 38 right now. Bill Colley as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And then you have this no season setting this year.
Yeah, well, I'm going to kind of combine the next two deals together. We printed regulations for 2 years. Typically this time of year, I was going to tell you before I forget, Bill, thanks for letting us come on a couple weeks ago, before we had our open house over there.
You know
We
what?
had
People would rather hear you than me most days.
we had a great turnout at the meeting. We had about 30 folks show up there, and so I appreciate that. A lot of your listeners. We got a ton of comments. Just to let people know what had happened, they ended up not passing. We had a really strong uh, support not to increase auction tags that go on sale, and so the commission didn't pass those, and so we got a lot of chimed in from your listenership, so I appreciate that. But now back to this other. Typically, this time of year, we have other meetings, and they're called season setting meetings. And what we do is we go through winter survival, we go through harvest success, and all of this type of stuff, and we try to set the next year's coming seasons. Well, we opted to do a 2-year regulation system. And so we're not having those meetings this year. We are monitoring the deer populations, just like I told you earlier, really close. And if there was something that really went haywire with deer survival and things like that, or elk, we would come in and print an addendum to that, so that anything that was changed. But we're not going to change anything at this time being. Everything's looking really good. Actually, we had a record harvest of mule deer last year, the highest record since overall deer since 1991, and we harvested more whitetail than we've ever harvested in the state. nothing like those Midwest and East Coast states. But I'm just going to go through those. We had 151,799 hunters that pursued deer, and they harvested 68,764 deer.
A lot of venison.
A lot of venison. Well, when you look at that 68,000, almost 67, I mean 69,000, and you're talking 100 pound, roughly 100 pounds of meat. That puts a lot of meat into the economy. I mean, into people's freezers. A lot of protein. We had a 45% harvest success. In 2014, we harvested 61,000 deer. So we're up almost 7,500 deer over the year prior. We did set the new record whitetail harvest of 30,568, and that's up about that's up a long ways from what it ever had been in when we first started hunting whitetail. I mean, the record prior to that was in 1996 when we had harvested 29,800. So we had and it's kind of weird because we had such a warm fall that it wasn't really indicative of harvesting a lot of whitetail, but people got out there and we've got really good numbers of deer this year.
We have a telephone caller
Oh,
looking to
great.
reach us. Of course, the telephone number, Kelton is here for the entire hour, 736-0300, and you're on the air with Kelton Hatch on KLIX. No, it must be that they thought they could get it in. Tell you what we'll do in the next segment of the program, because, all right, I'm going to try to squeeze one in now. I see another line popping up. You're up next. You got about a minute before the break. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll make this quick. Hey, I'm not an environmentalist, Kevin, but I got a question about this grizzly bear hunt and the delisting of the grizzlies over in Yellowstone.
Okay.
I know that the count's not right. They lost like 69 grizzlies last year from death. So they're making the count of the grizzly a lot higher than what it really is.
And I would probably say it's on the other side because I've dealt a lot with these counts, like our wolves and all that other stuff. Typically, when we count animals, we err on the side of caution, and so I figure the real number, like we're estimating in Idaho for wolves, about 750, where we're probably closer to 11 or 1,200. Those are ones we can document. That's the same way we do it with the grizzly bears. We've got some of our own fish and game biologists that are working close with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We've been tracking grizzlies over there for several years. We've got grizzlies as far down hitting habitats clear down by Soda Springs, which is over 2 hours, 3 hours by car almost from Jellystone or Yellowstone Park up there. And so, I think we got a pretty solid base of grizzlies over there.
I want to thank him for the call. We've got more of the Kelton Hatch from Idaho Fish and Game on the way. It's 20 minutes after 9 o'clock. Bill Colley with you as well on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com if you're listening online. Going to talk a little fishing, too, in just a few minutes. Kelton Hatch joining us in studio from Idaho Fish and Game. He's here for the entire hour today. Also, would like to remind you, if you have a comment or question for him, you can reach us at 736-0300. That's 736-0300. Bill Colley with you as well on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. But the show is top story. 39 right now at 924. You were still going through some numbers, of course, when it comes to the harvest for 2015, and it was an impressive year. What gets me about this is we keep hearing that young people don't go hunting as often as they used to, but apparently that's in some other parts of the country because the numbers are still huge here.
We're still getting good recruitment with our youth. I was just looking at those numbers the other day, and we're averaging about 16,000 new youth hunters a year. And so we are through our hunter ed programs and things like that. And so we're still actually increasing in numbers in Idaho. And I think it's because of the rural nature, and a lot of people are really addicted to the outdoors. I mean, we love our federal lands. We love being able to go out and hunt. We love being able to get out and hike and just do that. And so, I think that trickles down to the youth of these families that are very involved. All my kids hunt, and really enjoy it. They better, otherwise have to kick them out. But, no. But I was going to jump into the elk numbers. We had record numbers on the deer. Had the highest harvest on whitetail ever, and then had increasing numbers on deer. Our deer numbers were actually up the highest since 1991. And people that are old like me can remember back to the winter of 92, 93. We had a major winter die-off that year. And so it's nice to see those numbers rebounding. On the elk, we had a total of 90,206 deer elk hunters who harvested 24,543 elk, and that's a 27% harvest success, and that includes your archers and everybody. So that's a really good rate. That's 4,000 more elk than we harvested in 2014, and the highest number since 1996. And that was the number that I was tickled to see, that we had actually, you can see in harvest success that our elk numbers are really rebounding and coming back strong. And so people need to be excited. I mean, this is when people get talking about the good old days. I mean, we're right there again. We've had just some incredibly mild winters for about 5 years, and we had really strong increasing populations. We're going to have another strong increasing population this year. Deer numbers were great last year. Get out there. I mean, plan for a good hunt this fall.
We have a caller with us, and caller, you're on the air with Kelton Hatch from Idaho Fish and Game on KLIX.
Yeah, good morning.
Morning.
I'd like to make a suggestion to you guys. I think we ought to have some way of getting a program where when you're sturgeon fishing, maybe we could keep one a year or something, have a draw or some kind of thing.
We'd love to see something like that. And if you've got any suggestions on how to do that, we've discussed it. I know that Oregon has had a slot limit. One of our toughest parts on ours right here, we've got all these isolated populations, but we're actually in the process of trying to put kind of an idea together. We've been raising sturgeon in the hatchery system, and we're going to be starting to release those fish into the system. And hopefully, within the next 5 or so years, we'll have a draw permit system for people to do just that. We're going to try it out in certain parts of the state at first to see if it's going to work, trying to monitor the overall population.
I think it would be great because they're good eating.
Yeah, they are. And I hope you know that from buying domestic fish instead of wild ones.
No, I've caught them in other states where you're allowed to keep them.
I'm just teasing you.
I try not to do nothing illegal.
Yeah, and so, but no, sturgeon fishing, that's one of those beautiful things that I was never introduced to that growing up, because I grew up over in eastern Idaho, and now I'm over here. That's a really fun activity to go out and catch a 7-foot or 9-foot or 4-foot fish. We're very blessed to have them in the Snake River right here close to home.
I want to thank you for the call. I've seen photographs of some of the sturgeon that come out of places like Russia and Ukraine. I mean, my gosh, you'd think they were sea serpents.
Yes, they get. We've had people catch as long as 11-footers out of the CJ Strike area, where we've had tapes on them and measurements on them and stuff. And so, if you're a sturgeon fisherman, I think our sturgeon record right now in our we have a new Keep It Alive or Catch and Release record book. And what you need to do is just, roll your fish over on its back, take a tape measure, measure it, have a picture of the tape measure with you in it, and then a close-up of the tape measure. And can't take the fish out of the water, but if you can catch one over 7 foot, you can get your name in the record book until somebody catches a bigger one. So if sturgeon fishing's a hoot. And you get to do it late at night, typically is the best. And so,
well, we're going to talk a bit more fishing. Chinook, in fact, we were talking about that off the air.
We will.
That's coming up, and more for your telephone calls too as well. Kelton Hatch from Idaho Fish and Game joining us in studio. It's 39 at 9:30. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX, newsradio1310.com. Our studio guest, Kelton Hatch, is joining us from Idaho Fish and Game. He is here until 10 o'clock this morning. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX at newsradio1310.com. 9:34, coming up on 9:34, 39, probably with a high in the upper 40s today. As Kelton said, good hiking weather.
You bet.
And, of course,
for big guys.
Yeah.
For big guys. If you're really skinny and tiny, it might get cold.
I was going to say, the weather year-round is good for fishing, although some people don't prefer ice fishing because it's a little cold out there. But Chinook season on the way.
Chinook, well, and I should have thrown this on there too. We've got steelhead going right now. As soon as we can kind of get kind of a milder, where we're not melting so fast and the river's not muddy, people have been just cranking on the steelhead before we had all this precip, and so we really anticipate the steelhead coming on. Hopefully during spring break when I'm up chasing them, and so. With my kid, and then on April 23rd, the Chinook season opens. And what I was going to say, numbers are down a little bit from what they were last year. They had over 90,000 come across Granite Dam last year, 95,000. And this year they're anticipating about 65,000 coming across Granite Dam. So the fishing may be a little bit slower, but it's kind of like, sometimes we get those numbers. Sometimes we just get a huge influx later on in the year, and then numbers pop up a little bit. But if you'll go to the Fish and Game website at fishandgame.idaho.gov, it'll give you a list on the Clearwater, the Salmon, and the Snake River where everything will be open for spring Chinook, and it kind of gives you a breakdown of the areas from where to where. And that's the easiest way to be able to get that information. They're going to have it should be a really good year, though. It's just a good, with this type of weather and having two big old, one of my buddies went up steelheading, probably a month and a half ago, and they had such good success. They dropped off a couple at our place, and which was really happily accepted because they're delicious fish to eat. And I'll probably end up smoking one of them because we've eaten one and it was a 31 incher. So it was a big fish, and then we'll probably end up smoking the other one. But it's just fun to get out and see that part of the country and just enjoy the spring.
We have a caller with us. Caller, you're on the air with Kelton Hatch on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com.
Good morning, guys. Hey, this weekend we're going to go out kayaking, and we go to the back of Minidoka Reservoir, and then we kayak across to Smith Springs. And there's a boat lane there. Now, is kayak, can you get out of that boat lane, or do you know much about that?
Up on that refuge, I wish I was an encyclopedia on that, but I'm pretty sure. But you really need to check before you go. But I'm pretty sure that's open to non-motorized boats up there. It's basically a nesting protection area and stuff like that. And I don't know whether in the spring whether you can even go in there at all. But go check when you get up there. They'll have some literature right there at the launch.
We went up there last year, and me and my friend, and we took my wife, and she puts her iPod in and paddles around there and comes back and says, "Is there a size limit?" And I said, "What do you mean size limit?" And she hoists two of them out of the water that look like steelhead. Mm-hmm. And that's a good reason you need to take your wife, because they're clueless. They don't know what they're doing, so they catch more fish.
My wife always outfishes me. And so, but no, they do catch some lunkers up there later in the year and I know the later in the year that you can paddle up there, and I'm pretty sure in kayaks you'll be fine, but just double check if you wouldn't mind.
All right. Thanks, guys.
You bet. Good luck.
That reminds me, my mother and stepfather went out fishing, and she didn't like to do it, but she'd go along just to keep him quiet. And they went salmon fishing, and she ended up that day catching a salmon that was 2 ounces off the New York State record, and he caught nothing.
Yeah, well, that is so. Well, I used to take my wife ice fishing, and we'd sit there be jigging for lake trout and stuff up on Flathead Lake in Montana. She caught her limit. I caught one that was almost 6 inches, but it's just like I just did not have the patience to sit there and jig the whole time, and she was just very, very, very patient, which I'm kind of ADD. So
I'm going to squeeze a caller in. Caller, we've only got about 30 seconds before the break, so if there's a comment you need from Kelton, he'll give that to you on the other side of that. But go ahead, you're on the air.
Okay, yeah, my question is there anything being done to inform the bow hunter this season on the elk hunts, if they're going to be opening up depredation tags for the rifle guys at the same time?
Got about 20 seconds.
Well, restate that again, please.
Okay, last year we're bow hunting September in elk, and you guys had opened up depredation tags in the same unit and didn't inform nobody?
Yes, we are working very. Yes, we will have a different system in place this year. There's a couple times when we get down on those farm fields and we have those depredations that we do try, but we're going to try to get that information out because we had it's just not a good situation. And I do appreciate your call.
And we've got some discussion on turkey and bear on the way in just a few minutes. Don't go away. Kelton Hatch is here from Idaho Fish and Game, coming up on 9:40, and it's 40 right now at our studios. And you're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Top story with Bill Colley. Kelton Hatch in the studio with us. This is, of course, what you call fishing music.
Maybe yours.
I guess that's how you put the fish to sleep.
Yeah.
It's 9:44. Bill Colley with you too as well. News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Kelton joins us on a monthly basis from Idaho Fish and Game. And, of course, telephone number to reach the program, 736-0300.
I was just going to finish answering that gentleman's question before the break. He had talked about what was going on in that is every once in a while we'll get elk that are coming into ag fields, and they start eating farmers' crops and stuff like that. And if we can't get the elk out of there with the current season that's going on, was an archery, we'll give out depredation permits, which allows the farmer or us to give out permits to people to go out and remove those animals with high-powered rifles. It's not a really safe situation because we have archers out there trying to sneak up on some of these elk. And usually it's within a mile of the green field or the farmer's field. And so what we're trying to do is be a little better on getting folks notified. We do give the permits out with a lot of, be really cautious out there, but we don't ever want to have people hunting with a bow and a rifle. And so he had a really good comment there because that is a concern for us too.
You got a note here on your list. Turkey draws out.
Turkey draw. If you put in for the South Hills or any of the other controlled hunts, those applications have come out. Those seasons are just around the corner. Then we've got our general bear season that opens on August 15th. And then we also had the bear draws for over in the southwest part of the state. We got 2 units over there that have a controlled bear hunt. And so if you put in for any of those controlled hunts, get online and look up and see if you drew.
And you made it clear on the program before because we had a caller right off the top today about grizzlies. This is a black bear hunt.
This is a black bear hunt. We've got people. It's interesting out here. We kill less than 1 to 2% of our bears a year. We've got a lot of bears in Idaho. Central Idaho actually has 2 bear permit areas where you can buy 2 bear permits over the counter. People get kind of weird about this, but they are really good eating, and I mean, my kids a lot of times will like it better than any other meat. It's tender. You do have to watch it because it's very pork-like in some ways. I think it's got better flavor than pork, but it can have trichinosis, and so you want to make sure you cook it through. But if you ever have an interest in going out and doing a little bit of bear hunting, there's multiple ways to do it. I mean, you can do the way we enjoy doing it is spot and stalk, where you go out and just lay on the side of a green hill in the sun, out of the wind, and glass for bears on the other canyon, and then you go for a little walk if you find one. It's enjoyable. Other people like using bait. If you're ever been interested in that, we actually just posted a bear baiting video on the how-to and what to on our Fish and Game Facebook page. And if you haven't friended us on there, it's Magic Valley, Fish and Game Magic Valley. And we try to keep all our new updates on there, when we stock fish, when we are doing different projects, and we're really trying to we got about a little over 3,000 likes, I guess it is. I'm not really an aficionado at this, but I do post things to it, and so we try to keep people informed. So if you're not up to speed on that or part of our friends group here, go on there and like us, and then you can get those updates and you can check out those videos. Also just published another YouTube video on fawn survival, how we monitor the fawns, how we find them. We go through a necropsy, which is where we break the animal down to determine the cause of death, our radio collar deer, and it kind of gives you some insight. hopefully it helps people understand a little bit more about our jobs and what we do.
We have a caller with us. Caller, you're on the air with Kelton Hatch at 9:48, and your question or comment.
Well, good morning.
Morning.
I'm 49 and I've been bow hunting now about 10 years, so I'm kind of new to the sport. And Kelton, you just answered the concern the previous gentleman talked about with the crossover from high-powered rifle into archery on the depredation hunt. But I just have to tell you, I shot my first ever bear here a couple of years ago with my bow, and it is absolutely the best meat I've ever had. And I had heard horror story after horror story after horror story on how bad bear is. And
Well, I'm
can't wait to get another one.
Well, good. I'm glad you enjoy it. Yeah, it's one of those really underutilized meats. It's like people, I think it's just the predator. I like mountain lion, bobcat. They're really good meats. And bear, like this gentleman said, is a real delicacy.
Want to thank him for the call too as well. We're also at a time of year when a lot of these animals are probably just coming out of hibernation.
We're just starting to get some of our bears. They'll be frequenting out. I mean, some of the places they're hibernated, they're still under snow. But April 15th is really when I go out bear hunting. I usually wait until, I guess I like going on the Middle Fork of the Salmon River, and I wait until the lilacs are in blossom up there. And then we start getting more bears out because if they're coming out now, they're going back into den. They're not staying out. But once April, the 1st of April, you'll start getting more and more bears staying out and stuff like that. And so, no, this is like a reawakening. I love spring. I like getting out there. The biggest issue you have when you're out in the spring is just you have to go on tick hunts after you're done. And so people need to be very cognizant. We're actually starting to pick up some ticks on our WMAs, our wildlife management areas in the valley. And so if you're out and about very much, I've been up in the hills quite a bit in the last few weeks and haven't had any ticks or been out on these bitter brush plantings, but have seen a few down in the warm valley of Hagerman and stuff like that. But here in another 2-3 weeks, you'll really need to start being cognizant of those, because you can get spotted fever or Lyme's disease from that, and it's very, very uncommon. So don't let a little tick freak you out. If you're trying to keep ticks off, you can either tuck your pants in, wear gaiters, tuck your pants into your socks, wear gaiters, wear long sleeve shirts. I usually try to wear lighter colored clothes because that way I can see them crawling on it, because they're quite a dark body, and that way. But spring bear hunting, my one horror story from spring bear hunting, I got back to camping and I pulled 23 ticks off me.
Wow.
And so it was really a ticky spring that year. But so it is always good to do an investigative search when you get back from hiking around this time in the spring in another month or so.
I had a friend who literally went to the doctor, and the doctor said there's a odd marking on one of your calves, and he went down there, and sure enough, it was a tick trying to burrow in.
Yeah, probably burrowed in and was starting to swell up a little bit. But don't let that freak you out. I mean, there's a lot worse things.
Yeah.
Like sitting around and the only time the toughest part for me is this next week, is because March Madness kicks off today at 2. And so I am kind of a basketball freak, but after that I still got to get out and enjoy this time of year.
Kansas is going to go all the way, from what everyone tells me.
I kind of think so myself. That's who I've got winning. So
I looked at those brackets. See, we talked about women fishing earlier. What happens normally is there used to be a lot of women in the office who didn't watch a lot of basketball, so they would just sort of, they could take a dart and throw it and say, okay, I'll take this team, and throw another dart, I'll take this team. And they would often end up winning because of all the upsets that take place during the tournament.
Yeah.
You're not going to have that in the NBA, because you may have the greatest basketball team in history playing in Golden State.
Yeah, well, that's true. They're pretty decent crew. But that's the fun part about March Madness. But we've only got 3 weeks of that, and then we can be hardcore back outdoors. Get some fishing, and you can't sit in front of the TV too long. You got to get out and record one maybe and watch it at night. Fast forward through it.
This is the one thing I like about Idaho. When I lived in upstate New York, March Madness, there was always still 2 feet of snow on the ground.
Yeah.
And usually the one supposedly good basketball team in the state usually was a disappointment early in the tournament. they wear orange, for instance, and
Yeah.
had some recruiting violations again. But you can forget them this year; they won't last long. We're talking a little bit about bear. There is some safety concerns beyond the ticks out there too, right?
Well, there is and the big thing about when you're hunting bears is I'm not really ever concerned about, I mean, incidences with them, but unless it's, your camp groceries and camp food, bears in the spring, they're out. People will be getting out camping um, in the next month or so. Just be cognizant of where you put your food. Um, when you're I usually don't put my tent too close to the fire
Hmm.
because or whatever I'm camping in, because that fire has all the food scent in the world in it. So if a bear comes in, the first place he's going to go is your fire ring, because he's not there to eat you. He's there to find food, and he can smell whatever you cooked or whatever drippings had fallen into that fire ring. So if you slide that back, you keep your food separated, clean up in your camp. That's the tough part with our job. Every year we end up removing a dozen bears from the population that get in trouble because of people not putting up their stuff, and it's the same thing. I mean, it's basically the same rule of thumb with skunks. If you don't want skunks in your backyard, don't feed your cats or your dog on the porch at night. Clean the garbage up around your, out there with any food sources, and the skunks won't come around.
Uh, when you mention that too, even a smaller bear is a powerful bear. People have to be cognizant of that.
They do, and I mean, fortunately in Idaho, I really don't feel a lot of threat from any of those type of critters and stuff like that. Especially if you just use a few common sense type things. If you're out hiking along and stuff, spring, you're gonna. Interesting thing about bears is when people are out bear hunting, one of our rules on bear hunting is you're not supposed to shoot a sow with cubs. If there's any cubs with the sow, you cannot remove that bear from the population. So if a person gets out there around April 15th, typically there's very, very few sows that come out early. Usually the bears with cubs stay in, and then they come out a little bit later. The boars come out, but you need to be cognizant of that and sit there and glass your animal for a while to make sure that it doesn't have a cub with it, because that's the last thing you want to do is leave a cub out there orphaned or something like that. And so, but glass and watch and be cautious. But they're also the most aggressive, sows with cubs. But I had a real interesting experience a few years ago. I was up with my daughter, and we had a sow with 3 cubs come walking by. We'd glassed them. We setting up on the side hill. They just happened to move below a ravine below us, about 50 yards away. And we just sat there, and there's never any aggression or anything. She knew we was there, and just kept on going. She had a spot in mind where she was going to go, and she just kept going. And as long as they know, they're aware of your presence there and stuff. I'm much more afraid of cow moose with calves by far than anything else out there. And so they can be very aggressive with calves or without. Cows can be, and bulls during rut can be very aggressive. And so just be cognizant of that. But get out and just enjoy, spring break. Get out and have some fun. It's going to be a great week. Fishing's going to be good. Salmon Falls Creek right now is fishing really good. Magic Reservoir's been starting to pick up. Hagerman, WMA, and our Oster Ponds have been fishing really good. Durkee's, I'm guessing, will start really firing up along now. Filer's Kids Pond has been fishing really well in any of our area. The stream fishing, probably not going to be good for another couple months because we got a lot of runoff. But just get out and enjoy what we have in Idaho. What a great place.
Got about 30 seconds. We have one last caller. Caller quickly, and if Kelton can't answer it today, he may be able to give you a telephone number. Go ahead.
Well, my question is on wolves. I'm an elk hunter. Went into 27 this year. Saw 2 wolves, no elk, and I see where there's a new report on the website, Idaho Fish and Game, and it's showing that the numbers are being taken by hunters are going down, and And anyway, I'm just seeing a lot of wolves out there and want to know what Kelton thinks about that.
27, any of those wilderness areas, we're still really struggling. Our front range is where we're starting to see the harvest on the elk numbers and the elk really increasing. But that's one of those places where we've got a study going, and we do hope to get that under control. But I hear you. I hunted 27 for years, and I don't hunt up there anymore other than for mule deer.
Want to thank him for the call, and we want to thank Kelton Hatch for dropping by. We'll see you in about a month.
Yep, sounds good.
And, of course, God willing, if the creek don't rise, they'll allow me to do this all over again tomorrow morning on Friday from 8 until 10 o'clock. Rush Limbaugh is next, though, following Fox News at 10 o'clock. From 10 o'clock until 1 o'clock, Sean Hannity after 1 o'clock news, Glenn Beck after 4 o'clock news, and Dave Ramsey tonight right here on News Radio 1310 KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com.